I mean, there's a little bit of machining, mostly welding and trying to develop a precise eye. I'd love to see
T41.
Oh, here's the robot. Is that right?
That's the way a can is made. And of course, all the lines and the cans are transferred. That comes off a lithograph press.
Was the press in the building as well?
No, the lithograph department was over there on 3rd Street.
Oh, yeah.
This is when we made milk cartons, the square milk cartons.
Oh, I saw that in one of the journals that you had. Huh.
And this is transferring your cans. I'll come to that robot shortly.
Wow.
That was a filler type. It had a little bit of everything in it. And we had that in the backyard. This was our display.
Oh, look at that display. Isn't that funny, huh? Bicycle, bicycle.
We call it Ferdinand.
Walter, you gotta meet my good friend Benny Walter Lister.
Your first name?
Benny.
Benny. My pleasure.
Benny and
Benny
Benji. We're known as
Chekhov.
the Benjamin brothers.
I know.
Yeah.
We'll get the whole lot of it.
Yeah.
That was the robot we made, and that went all over the country. Showing you how you fill.
Walter,
and-
how did it actually work? I mean, what did it do?
How tall
Well,
is that?
That was about 15 feet.
No.
Whoa.
Kidding.
That's massive.
It gives you the whole
And
explanation.
this was all cast, this whole giant
Oh yeah, that's
thing?
all aluminum. Everything is aluminum there. This is stainless steel up here, this
Jesus.
filler tank.
This is Ferdinand. Wow.
And what did it do exactly, Walter?
It didn't do anything. It just showed the
Looks
cans,
good.
the way the cans would go through the machinery and how they were filled and all of that.
Uh-huh.
But actually, it didn't produce
It
anything.
was a sample. It
That
showed
is right,
It showed the
yeah.
product around the world.
That's cool. I mean, that is artwork. Remember, I was asking you before, you know, what kind of artwork came out of here. That, in my mind, is artwork, definitely.
Well, the
especially
way-
seeing as it didn't do anything but show people things.
That's the definition of artwork.
Yeah, really. Show somebody
They
something.
have quite an article in here that we were slow moving,
Uh-huh.
but the people that we had in the design department were sharp.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you all of that. We were slow, but we beat everybody in the country. Continental Can was our greatest adversary.
Yeah.
And we always had to outproduce them and get ahead of them. Then when we come through with the square, I don't know whether you ever remember the square milk cartons,
Yeah.
the little flat top on it.
Oh, there's a little real flat top.
Yeah. Well, the reason they stopped that, the people were complaining that when they delivery men put it on the front porch, the dust would collect in the cap, and then germs would get into the milk, and that threw us out of that business. So we made millions of them, and I still say that that was a better deal than what you're getting today. You can't stack the cartons today. They're
Yeah.
peaked, you know.
That's right.
But these you could stack. And it's just like when we started cans. They used to ship cans full round. Then we got to the place where we flattened out the can, and we got more into a crate. And then when it went into the can factories, it would go through the rounding machine. It would go on a spit like and round the whole can body out to the correct dimension again. So
The idea
all
was
of
to
these
go
things,
stack.
all of these things that were happening in here, especially when we were assembling a machine. You have the assembly print showing the dryers, I think.
Right.
A lot of
Yeah.
cylindrical.
Rounds, thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that picture was taken from that end, and the whole assembly floor was full when that was taken.
In fact, that's part of that picture is what now is in the bus stops. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've seen them, but we have a big poster for our show. and a portion of that picture shows the cylinders is in there.
Yeah.
And the guys are over here eating lunch. It's like lunchtime. And
Yeah, the benches are all the
Yeah.
assembly benches along this wall here.
yeah,
Planers and big planers and the boring mills and the horizontal boring mills, drill presses are all along this side here.
yeah. I hate to jump ahead here. Actually, I wanted to look at the rest of that, but I'm dying to show you
Would
some
you like
of
to look
these.
through this? Please. No, yes.
Trying
It's
to
only
show you
50
some of
years
these,
old.
these prints. That's a close-up of that. That's 1929.
Yeah, these are drill presses along here. My machine is right here. This drill press is right down in that corner. And that's looking up toward this end here.
Right.
Well, that come out nice and clear.
Yeah.
And there's all your I-beams for your cranes coming up. Well, you've got the I-beams up there now for the cranes.
Right. Yeah, we've been using those a lot.
Now here's... What you seen in that picture, this was a cylinder that went around, or this is the doors that went around those cylinders.
Oh.
And they're all threaded on the inside. Now, they look pretty small here, but
They look huge, actually. I
They
can
only
see.
weigh about 500 pounds.
Yeah.
So they're big, heavy castings. And along here, we're
And there's some
closing
halves
machine.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, before they go together. Huh, that's great. There's a close-up. I think that's from the war years, but that's a close-up in the
Now,
back.
this here is way down in the corner
Yeah.
there. That's a planer.
Right.
And this is a boring mill. Vertical turret lay, they call it.
sure.
A boring mill. And of course, like I said about the benches, they were all along the wall here.
Now, in the beginning, they were straight, and then you guys turned them 90 to get more guys in there.
That's right.
Right, I noticed that at
This
first.
is the foreman. This is Charlie Clemens. was
Yeah,
his name.
right.
Now these castings here, this is wartime.
Yeah, that's the tank pullers or whatever
That's
they were,
right.
big old winches.
Yeah.
Winches.
Oh boy, I remember. They come out nice and clear. That's better than the original picture.
Well, in
know,
a
a
way,
couple of them
it shows a
look
little bit. It was,
The detail and everything, because Charlie doesn't seem that clear.
he's tiny. You should see him in the picture. You can hardly see the guy. Now, let me find that picture.
I'm sorry to have taken your seat.
Oh, Walter, that seat was for you.
Okay, here's close up of your bro there.
Yeah, that's Brother Frank.
Yeah, he's turning out those
He would,
covers, right?
not because he's my brother, but everybody marveled at him because he would even use his knees to push these here levers around.
Incredible. Boy, what a thing to get a film that had to have had a film of that, huh?
This boy wound up as superintendent of Burgermeister Beer Company. He left our company,
Oh, wow.
and that was just around the corner over here. Now, these are what you call vertical mills. Of course,
boring
that's it.
mills?
No, they're vertical mills. They're milling machines. The boring mill is like I showed in the other picture. Oh, this is a boring mill here. The vertical turret lathe, or a boring mill, we call it. And these are vertical milling machines.
So, Lizzie, where's all the pictures?
And this one here,
Down at Sarah's.
this machine was right over in here.
Oh, here.
Right when we went around the corner up into the milling department. And over here was the tool room.
You mean Benjamin the original? Or you mean?
No, I mean, we're missing a whole lot of prints.
Oh, I don't have those. That's it, Benji. I didn't have anything else.
Well, we don't have any long shots of the space in here. There's a whole lot of prints in here. Where did they all go? We don't have any shots of the.
You had one shot of the whole floor looking down
Yeah,
this
we
way.
had a
and
whole
all
lot
of
of shots like that.
These are what we call Heiser castings. They were for tractors and
Well, I
everything
haven't done anything
else,
with it.
curtains and whatnot.
I hadn't even looked at it since you gave it to me.
Well, that's pretty bizarre.
You sure you...
Those are the Matroni sisters.
Yeah, we did I wanted to show you this. Well, this is the first picture. This is in 26. out back. You're up here.
Yeah.
I did a lot of.
This is my father over here.
Right. I did some close-ups of all the characters in that shot because it's hard to see all these faces, but from 1926, there's a lot of really incredible characters in there. So as you flip through them, they're all close-ups of the.
This boy, Herman Gray. His brother started the Gray Shop over at 18th and Bryant. See, that was called the Gray Shop of the American Can Company. That's where I started. It's down here at 18th and Bryant. And he came here. He worked in the experimental shop, which is away on the other end on the corner of Mariposa and Alabama there, on the second floor. That was experimental shop there. And his brother was in the design department. He'd just come in when he felt like it, and he'd design a part, and then he'd take off, and he'd come back, and he'd scratch his head a little bit, and then add on to it.
What a job.
Quite a family.
Yeah.
Very great.
There's you, of course.
Yeah, that's me up there.
Have handsome pillow.
This man, Al Twiddy was his name.
Twitty.
Twiddy, T-W-I-D-D-Y. And he worked for the Salvation Army, and all the extra money that he made went to the Salvation Army. And he left the can company. When we closed, he was 84 years old, and he was still running a machine to it. Well, these are great. You take these down in John's apartment?
No, I did them just on my wall with my extension tubes on my camera. Let me turn this around for you.
Who's this character?
He worked in the blacksmith shop. When we had the blacksmith shop, he was a helper down there. But he was a good worker.
He looks like he's been into
He worked like heck. You could see the way he
Yeah,
was.
I know.
He dug into everything.
Like me.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a bunch of the old timers.
Here's a lovely hairdo, I think.
Yeah. Looks like static electrical.
Yeah.
All right. How are you, Maya?
Oh boy. This boy came in one morning. He was a heck of a good machinist, and he was down. And I went over and I spoke to him. He says, well, he says, I had a little trouble. 2 weeks later, he committed suicide.
Oh, man.
So there's a lot of stories and whatnot in here.
Yeah.
And that's Frank again. If you just look back and think about the things that happened day by day, and as we went,
That's a little later. That's another close-up of one of those group photos, a different one.
yeah, this is when I was made foreman of the lady department.
Yeah.
That's Charlie Clemens, the one you saw in that long picture. He was a shop steward. Dominic Rossi, he had charge of the assembly floor where, right up on the end there where his department was.
Here's some good close-ups.
This was the shop superintendent. When he retired, I replaced him. And all the rest of the boys are machinists.
They'll lathe.
Yeah.
Here's another close-up with you in there.
This is one of these two. Remember I was telling you about McIntosh and Guy Smith? They were in the priesthood. And we would sit down there at a long table at our noon hour. And they would come out and they would quote from the Bible. And we had a ball down there. Charlie Johnson again. All memories.
There's some of a little close-up of that one showing. I guess these are the office.
These are the four sisters right here. the Trony sisters, and they all worked in the office. That was the office force, every one of them.
Yeah.
No, I'll take that back. Sam Brown, he was a chief electrician. He had his office down in the first floor. Oscar Momquist was the plant manager. He was a paymaster. Jim Sanders is the one, when he left in 41, I took his place. And Walter Johnson was chief of production. So, these are great.
All right. I guess the other ones we're missing have gone like into the publicity thing and everything for the show. Now, most of the bigger shots we've been using. Did you see the flyer, our little flyer with the... Did we show them that yet?
Here's this.
Yeah, this is the bus stop.
Yeah, this is the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Now, we're looking
Against this
from
wall.
that direction. See, they're up against this wall
Yeah.
here. And the doors that I showed you in here, the cylinders,
Yeah.
they fit around these here drums. We call these drums.
Oh.
And the drums are all thread. There's one continuous thread going around there.
The drum has a continuous thread. And the large area is continuous thread?
This here is thread.
Well, that must have been
That's threaded.
that must have been quite a die that did that.
No, you did that on
Well,
the lathe.
on the lathe, just running the thread. Oh, I see.
That is right. See, and we did the same thing on the door that went around these. Was done on the vertical boring mill. You had to cut the threads down there too. And those threads, there were 8 to the inch, 1/8 lead. And when the ends would come through on the table, they would cut down the end there, and the this part revolved. This revolved. There's a big gear down here, and they would carry the ends all the way to the top. But before that, the ends would receive a spray of sealing wax. And this is what we call dryers. They were heated up. Then when the ends come through, the sealing wax, by the time it come through here, was completely dry, and that acted as a gasket before it went on to the can end.
Oh, wow.
So that was taken up. We built 50 of those at one time. That's why it was so crowded.
That was one of the first projects here too, right? When you opened, or
No,
no, that was
no,
later
they were
on.
developed later. We had a little machine. It was called a hand seamer. We rented them out, and the people that bought them were in the canning industry or canned fruit or whatever they wanted. And they would lease them for $65 a month. They were small machines. So finally, Continental Can threw an antitrust suit at us that we were not doing the right thing by allowing these people to lease them. So we had to sell them. What happened? They were pleased. They got them cheap. The machine was cheap, and they got all the cans and the ends and everything else. But when they needed repairs, we repair them free. We'd bring them in, repair them, and send them back to the factory again. But when the trust suit went through, when they had to do their own repair work, they were just out of line. They wanted us to go back again, and the can company wouldn't do it. They went ahead and built these machines, and they sold them. But the canners were pretty sad after that because they had to pay for their own upkeep.
That's interesting.
This is great. This is clearer than the picture you had.
Yeah, that's you'll see that around town on a bus shelter about 3 feet high. This is what it looks like. We have 15 of them out now. There's one right on Van Ness, I've heard. I haven't seen it.
This is the whole placard, huh?
Yeah. And,
And
this,
they're
the
what,
writing
three-
talks about the show. And,
3 by 4?
yeah, something like that. And then this is our small little flyer about the show, showing sort of like before and after.
These were machines that seemed the square cans, the rectangular cans, square cans. But they went out pretty quickly, developed another machine that turned them out about 10 times faster than these did.
Oh, no. Okay, this is the whole story here. wanted to be, you know, as authentic as we could in this
You want to
show.
put them in here?
So Joanna found the old shift bell.
Yeah, I was looking out here. You had a fire bell out there. Is that still out there?
Yeah, we're using it. We just hooked it up to our new fire system.
I saw a cover over it.
Yeah, and it sounds so funny. It goes ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding. It sounds like an old-time fire truck or something.
That's right.
But this is the shift bell, right? This was up on the wall right
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
And I thought we couldn't get it to work, and we found that somebody stole the spring out of it because I guess they were so tired of hearing it. But before that happened, somebody went up there and put this American can bag around the bell to keep it from being so loud.
That's one of these fellas that are along the wall here. But that was our call bell. See, we all had numbers. My number was 2 and 22. 22, ding, 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 ding. Or just a plain ding, ding. Plant manager was 1, which ding, and that was it. But when you got one of the fellas that were up in the 50s, it'd knock your ears out. So these people here along the bench, they got sick and tired of it. We knew they did these things.
Yeah.
So Sam Brown, like I told you, he was the one, and he raised Cain because it would hurt the inside of the bell.
So this bag, what was the purpose of a little bag like this?
Small parts.
Just small, like
Just
little
small
machine
parts.
parts.
That's all.
And that's the way you'd ship them out.
Yeah.
What about that address on there?
Yeah, how come it says 3131 19th Street, San Francisco 10, California?
That was over in the can factory on 19th and Harrison. That's where they made the cans.
Is that the brick building? It says American on it just right now still, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
No kidding.
This
That's
is 19th and Harrison.
I wondered about that.
wow. That's a part of this history then. I thought that was like an old asbestos building or something.
No.
That's part of this. Was that built before or after
That was
this?
built way before this one.
Amazing.
So they
Now-
eventually closed that up. That was built, no, I started in 1920 over there at 18th and Bryant. So that must have been built around 1915 or so like that.
Now, when there was the gray shop and all of those different shops that came here, was that also an American Can Company shop, or did they?
Well,
Did they?
it was the American can, just like the one that over in 3rd Street,
Right.
where they made their cans and
Right.
everything else. Well, that was the same thing. They were producing cans.
I see.
The one on 3rd Street was built later
Right.
and eventually wound up and it took in the whole lithograph department.
I understand.
So this one here, when they brought up our Robbins factory, our Robbins shop, and the Gray shop, and they united them into this factory,
I see.
we did take care of all the can-making machinery from there on in.
Right. I understand.
So, in fact, one of the things we had over there was a big, the nurses department. The nurse here had her one room downstairs.
Right.
That was next to the timekeeper's room. But over there, they had the x-ray, they had everything for a complete examination at that time.
I understand.
So when that closed down, everything moved into this shop here.
I see. So in our first rehearsal, I was up there on the steel beam, walking the beam, and I looked down. I was tying a piece of string, and I looked down and I saw this laying on the beam. So I turned it over, and can you believe it? It sat there on that beam all these years. Oop, that's all right.
Yeah, this rotten paper.
Yeah.
This is when you'd write out, the foreman would write, say a machinist wanted a tool, a mill, or a lathe tool, then the foreman would write this on the material and give it to the man. He would bring it in, he'd get his, whatever he asked for.
I see.
And then if you wanted to buy stuff from the outside, you would write one of these out and it would go through the purchasing agent's department and into the plant manager, and then he would okay it. And he would take it from there. I'm sorry that
That's all
happened.
right. We can tape that. No problem.
Memories.
I know.
Are you going to put that one up again?
Yeah, we're gonna put it up again and hook it up. But I gotta find a spring for the hammer.
Well, where is your call button going to be located?
Probably up where we're running the show. Because we'll want to use it during the show to sort of signify. So this actually wasn't a shift bell. The bell that called the
Oh,
shifts
no.
was in the building somewhere else.
No, that was the only bells we had in the building. We noticed.
And so like at lunchtime, you guys just knew it was noon and you'd leave, or was there a bell that
No,
went
the
off?
bell.
So this bell would go off
That bell
too.
would ring. That would be constant for about 2 or 3 seconds. Bing,
Right.
Bing, 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 and so forth and so on.
Right.
And of course, the men then would rush out to the sandwich wagon or up to the restaurant or up to the bar to get a little snoot and come back to work.
So what was the favorite lunch in those days? What kind of stuff did you guys eat? Way back in the very
You're going
beginning.
back to ham and salami again.
Ham and salami, right? And French bread,
And you
right?
had your coffee and donuts.
Yeah.
And of course, over here at the corner, at Florida and 17, there was a little restaurant and bar in there at that time. And they would go over and have their hot lunch, whatever, soup or whatnot.
You remember the name of it?
No, I forget. The name is probably on there now. I don't
It's-
think
no, it's
there's
changed.
nothing on there. Is there anything in there?
Oh yeah. In fact, there's a great restaurant in there right now called Eichelberger's. And it was the country club before that, and even in my time, I think
Domino's.
it's been La Domino's. It was the country club, then La Domino's, and now it's Eichelberger's. But I'm sure it's changed hands many times.
It'll probably come to me later on because it's a little dense right now. I think back that far.
Yeah. It's okay.
It'll come to me later
Yeah.
on. And some of them would go down on Folsom Street to get their lunch too. And they'd hurry back. That was when we had an hour for lunch, then we cut it down to
Half hour.
45 minutes, and then we cut it down to a half an hour, and we still didn't beat the cars. The group that worked here, well, we want to get out a little bit earlier. All right, so we cut it down 15 minutes, and what happened? They wanted to catch the earlier cars ahead of that. So it was all quite a mess there for a while until we stabilized a half-hour lunch, and that was it. We had to go
Did you
by.
bring your lunch or did you go after lunch?
Well, actually, I didn't go out.
Well, you were busy playing music during
Well,
lunchtime
the thing
too.
was this. We'd go back to the half and half milk, you know, when they had half and half when they first started it out. And I would have a couple of sandwiches and a quart of milk. That would be my lunch, because if I went out and had a heavy lunch, I couldn't operate. I'd be falling asleep in my office, being full that way. So as far as eating is concerned, a lot of the fellas stood around their machines and sat down and they ate their lunch at their machines. And when the bell rang, there they were, right at their machine. They didn't have to travel anywhere.
Can we turn Walter around so we can get shots of him in the space?
Yeah, so we have to be a little careful of the silhouette.
Oh God, that's it.
We're getting you, Walter.
It's working right now, because being with them so many years, you know everyone by their first name. You'd call them by their first name, you'd speak to them. And all the machinery that were down in that end were what we call the planers. Then we had the vertical turret lathes, all the boring mills, and then the drill presses all on this side here, and all the bench work was done over here. Now this picture shows the benches in line with the wall, but later on we cut the benches to 8-foot lengths and brought them out straight this way to get more people in here to work. And it gave us a better way of getting into the assembly on these particular machines.
How many people worked here at that time?
During the war, we had about 550, and after the war ended, the Second World War, of course, we had about 485, and out of the 485 were about 220 machinists.
32.
So, all in all, this was
So
noted as the best machine shop in the country because of the mechanics that we had here and the die makers we had here, because the can company would hire people, but they would never fire them if they were doing their work. I don't remember anybody getting fired. So all in all, we carried 26 apprentices, and they learned the trade from A to Z, and they went out and they got what they were asking for.
You mentioned we were trying to remember how many women actually worked here then. 'Cause I noticed in one of your catalogs that in some of the American can machine shops around the country,
Yeah.
there were the majority in some
Yeah.
places were women.
Well, most of the women were down in the office. I would say there would be approximately 50 or so.
And during the war,
We had them in the shop as machinists, some of them. And I would say close to, sum total would be about 100.
100 out of the 200 and some odd, 35 machinists.
Yeah, we had 220 machinists. And those women would be doing bench work. Some of them did run machinery. And they were all good. They produced. But you asked me a question about how many got married.
Yeah,
That I don't know.
that's right. You have a good memory. That was our last interview.
I hate to interrupt, but I'd like to place the chair over there, if you don't mind.
And when I first came in here, everything, you had the stage up there.
Right.
And it was loaded with different things. And now that it's all open, I could just about place every machine in the shop. They stand out. Like I said, down on that end there, the furthest end, we had our planers, 3 of them down there. We also had the layout man was down in that corner there. And then coming up further, you see where the hose is on the wall over there? In line with that would be the boring mills going across this section. Now, if I had those pictures, I could show you what I'm talking about.
You like those pictures?
Yeah.
And then further end on this side here is all drill presses. Now, how to explain that side? We're looking toward the assembly floor. We're going all the way down that way. There we are. Now this machine here is directly in the corner down here. And that has a table that moves back and forth on there, and it machines all the long parts that we needed for runways and everything else like that. And then this boring mill, like I said, where that hose is, directly across, there was 3 of these machines in line. Then comes on this side,
Is what you want?
you know, this is looking up at this side of the building here. These are your benches right over here with your overhead cranes. And of course, these are the machines that we were assembling at that time.
Why don't you go get your pictures?
Now that one there with my brother in it. Now that one there, this machine is on that wall there, and that was right where that red ladder is standing now. That's where this vertical mill was at. So, and that's another vertical mill. Then further down would be drill presses. That would continue from Oh, where you have the exit sign there, you see down to where the hoses was drill presses and horizontal boring mills, we call them. And of course, all of this space here was taken for assembly. We put machine together. And this is what I was talking about, the drill presses that were along that wall. This is during World War II. These are parts that went on to steam engines for ships. Now here again we have the boring mills down here that were down where I'm talking about. Here's the 3 planers back here, and here's the 3 boring mills. There's one of them, the other one is over in here. This part was right alongside that wall there. And these were what they called air pump beams for the steam engines on ships. So they weighed approximately maybe a ton, something like that. And the reason we got the job was because of the type of machinists and mechanics they had here. Emil Schiele, Selmer Ness, Al Colin, and those 3 machinists there. Now that part there, that's the radial arm on a drill press. All your controls are here. This part of it goes back and forth on this here arm, and of course all your tools are down here, your drills and your spindle. And here he's on a part that he's holding down there, and he's drilling and reaming. That is a good shot. This is our testing machine. We lose about 1 can out of 10,000. Shows a leak in it. And this is a tester for it, can air testers. And these were our tables where the jobs were put on these tables to supply the machinists that were running the different machines. This is a good picture that holds almost the whole assembly floor. I know you don't know what a scroll shear is, but this scroll shear, in that Fortune magazine, I showed you a page where the tin was going through a lithograph department. And this was the slitter that made the different size cans, with the height of the can, and it would go to the different machines where they would be made into the regular bodies. And if you want to know where that clock was, it was right up there.
Yeah, we just figured out where it had been, because there's still a small frame for it.
There isn't much more you could talk about this because the whole assembly floor is filled. And from there, of course, when they were finished, they would go downstairs to the painter and crated and shipped away.
This is just a contact sheets of all the photos that Benji took.
Oh, that's great.
And you should look at it, because if you want any, we'll get some made up for you.
He went through a lot of work doing this.
He enjoyed it, though.
I have to laugh at this here picture here. we were great friends, the whole family were great friends. So when I was running a lathe, I made a little brass ring for each one of them. Married to them all. This was our lead that run the shop.
Do you remember the names?
Is it just really
You want the names in there? First of all, there's Otto Rambo, Harry Chelson, Walter Lister, Bob Kohler, Eli Four. Not too clear. Looks like Eric Giffroy, the plant manager Ernie Davis, and the paymaster Pat Patterson. There should be more onto the picture. See, this picture stops here. And I've got Max Wicke and Dave Oberg. And that was the personnel that run the shop.
Were they all here until the end?
You mean up to the time the shop closed? No. Otto Rambo, he retired. Joe Kosetsky, he retired. He was in the hardening room. That's it. Those two retired. And the rest were here until the shop was closed. So all in all, it was a great thing because we had good men that were running each department. We moved here, I come up here in 1924, and I retired in 1968. That was 44 years later. Worked 4 years in the other shops, Gray Shop and Robbins Factory. And then came up here and finished, if you want to call it a career, I finished it here. Then the shop moved down, on November the 1st of 1968, they start moving down to Brisbane. And Brisbane closed in I think it was 1979 or 1980, and then everything went back east. And then later on, the American Can went over to, today what's called American National Can. And that's the way it is now. Like they say, life is just a memory, isn't it? When you look back at all of these things that are happening and all the people that you've met, I could say that the amount of people that went in and out of this shop would be in the thousands in all those years.
It just seems sad that such a great shop and such good people should just disappear.
I think the situation, taxes and everything else had a lot to do with it. This is only my own opinion. I don't know whether it's true or not, but the way things were going, they figured that the labor and everything else was cheaper back east. So they went back east, closed these shops up, and went back there where the labor was cheaper. Because San Francisco was always a great union town. Actually, I was one of the first shop stewards in this shop. So whenever we went for anything, the main thing that we went for was hospitalization, taking care of your family, and merit raises. If a man outproduced the other people doing the same thing, we would grant him maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 cents more an hour. And they felt good about it because in those days a nickel was a nickel. today. A nickel, they throw it in the street like it's. But they all enjoyed it. I had one person come up to me one day after he got a merit raise, and he says, "It isn't for the sake of the raise. It makes me feel that I'm a little better than the other fellow." And that's what it was all about. But today, it's a different story in this respect, that most of your money is going for benefits. The people are getting more money, but everything else goes up accordingly. So you're no further ahead today than you were then. People still can't afford to buy homes. Automobiles are mostly on credit. And I believe if you had competition among the people, the workers, and if they enjoyed what they were doing, it would be a better grand national product. So all in all, everything is relative. So from there on in, it's a matter of how you think about what's happening today.
Did you ask all the questions that you wanted to ask, Joanna? There were some others.
One was about.
Right.
Well, it's too bad we didn't have sound recordings in those days, and then we could take sound of what was going on in the machine with all the screeching and the groaning and the whatever, the different type of cuts that the machinists were taking on the different machines. Nobody ever thought of putting earplugs in or anything like that. We never used masks. We had toxic fumes all over the place, if you want to call them toxic, because all our cooling water that we use on machinery was made out of soluble oil. And you mix the soluble oil, 20 gallons of water to 1 gallon of soluble oil, and that would cool off your tools and the part that you were cutting. You'd always keep everything cool. And then on some machines, we would have lard oil. Now, lard oil, when it started getting hot, it would smell, and the fumes would be all over. But nobody paid any attention to it. It wasn't working.
Did anyone actually ever get ill from?
Nobody.
Really?
Nobody got sick. It was just a natural thing to come in the morning, and you come into the machine shop, and you get these smells right off the bat. So you'd come to work and think nothing of it. Nobody ever raised a question as to why do we breathe this in? So it didn't matter. As long as we worked here for 8 hours a day and got a paycheck, that's all that mattered. And being in a machine shop as long as I've been in here, through asbestos and everything else,
Right.
I think everything that they're doing today is a little bit overdrawn. And they got the people in that category where they're a little bit afraid to touch anything because it's toxic poison. Well, we lived through all of that. We lived through all the enamels and the paints and everything else, and we never ever heard about youngsters chewing on chairs or tables and eating enamel or any kind of paint. But apparently, due to the fact that the world is changing and the people are changing, they're picking up every little thing that they might think causes an illness. That's the way I look at it.
Well, you're a great testament to that, that's for sure.
Well, I don't know about that. It's just one of those things that happen. But I think the whole thing goes back to the way people work together and pull together. They didn't have the same problems that you have today with all the people that are coming in here, the immigrants and everything else, the population getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the food situation getting smaller, and I can't see why that is happening. But apparently the oversupply of people, like here in California, what have we got, 31 or 32 million people? When you take care of that, and a lot of them are not working, we haven't got the industry to keep them working, and you can't make jobs unless you have something to do. And the jobs that are, the companies that are already situated, they go ahead and do what they have to, and every time the people go out for a little more, because the living wage the manufacturer has to raise his price to keep up his profit. I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's hurting everybody. A youngster, I feel sorry for the youngsters that are coming up today trying to buy a home. And they've got to put down at least $50,000 before they get into it. And then depending on how much they make during their lifetime, eventually they might own that home if they're healthy enough.
Yeah.
I might be an old fogey, I'm talking like they did the years ago, but this is my way of looking at it because I went through the ropes, I knew what people wanted, and heard their stories day by day. You were Mr. Anthony. Mr. Anthony, what do I do today? So you go ahead and explain what you wanted. All in all, though, even the Fortune magazine that you see there gave us credit for the way we handled our people and treated our people. At that time, the company had between 35 and 50,000 employees.
That's all over the country.
That's all over the country, yes. So today they're American National Can, and they're all over the world. It's a part of the Piccinni Corporation that was in France. And they're building little subsidiaries here and there to keep the can game going, and they're still tops.
And this machine shop, was it the largest machine shop in California or in the western U.S.?
I wouldn't say it's the largest machine shop in the country, but if you take Hunters Point and Bethlehem Steel and a few of the others, Mare Island, of course, due to the fact that they did Navy work and Army work and Marine work and all of that, in our country, in our company itself, this was the largest shop. So then we had a shop in Geneva that wasn't up to par as far as this one was concerned. So it just kept on going, and like I said, if you fired anybody or let anybody go, you would be somebody that didn't know exactly what he was doing at any one time.
So was this, I'm sorry, I didn't hear if this was the largest machine shop on...
In the can company.
Yeah, amongst the American Can Company.
That's right. We turned out more apprentice boys into machinists than any of the others. Hit him again, Charlie.
You want to read this?
Yeah, well, maybe Walter can read it. Or you go ahead.
Um,
Let's explain this.
1968, under the ownership of the American Can Company. It was the largest machine shop in the western United States.
That's what we didn't
No,
know.
that's
So now
what
that's
everything
wrong.
down. The shop was made just for our single purpose of making machinery.
So we could say something about being the largest machine shop
In the
within the
American-
American Can Company. Okay. With very little employee turnover during its 43 years of operation. The shop manufactures the highest quality canning machinery and parts including 5-gallon square dies, closing machines, curling clinchers, and fish fillers. It also designed machinery for the famous log cabin syrup can. From 1941...
But it was an expensive can to make. See.
Yeah.
There was so many things that were built like a log cabin. They had the smokestack and everything else on it. But apparently, log cabin went over to the glass bottles on account of the cost of this can here.
From 1941 through 45, the shop was devoted exclusively to the war efforts. It manufactured recoil springs, propellers, radar parts, shells, and valves for submarines. During this period, 35% of the machinists were women. After the war, shop resumed its previous production. In 1972, this building was bought by a group of artists.
That part is.
Yeah, this is
That's
very
important.
big. Come to be known as Project Artaud. The space where Theodore Artaud now resides was originally the shop's assembly floor. In Steel Shadow, it's not a narrative representation of Project Arto's history, but rather a series of impressions sparked. I don't know.
That's research.
Yeah. So let's see. Oh, yes. Let me read this last paragraph. We would like to extend our deepest appreciation to Walter Lister, shop superintendent and employee of American Can Company from 1920 through 68, for donating his time to our oral history project, for use of his photographs and documents, and for his unconditional support and tireless goodwill.
What is one to say? No, this was my pleasure. If I could have done more, I would gladly do it. Like I told Benji, when we first went through the shop, see, everything is closed up, and it gives you a different view, a different impression as to what happened. Now, when I look at that floor up there, the whole thing has changed because that was open down here. And then we went up here, and you got the staircase over there, then you had the tool room, and then you went into the lathe department. Of course, up on the third floor, we're on the second floor now. But on the third floor, you had your grinding department. On this floor, you had your main machinery, and down in the basement, you had other machinery and whatever. The men's room, women's room, the blacksmith shop at that time, shipping and receiving, steel room. The steel room is where Lizzie has her room. So, all in all, I thought I might make a little diagram as to how these floors were shaped at that one time, but it takes a lot of thinking. Trying to turn the whole building around and seeing every entrance, every exit, and all of that, and what happened in the back when they had a garage in the back, it isn't there anymore. And all of those things, it's quite a, it would take quite a story to go through the whole thing to explain it. Like, I was confused there for a while when we were going down the different aisles.
Right.
Being that I was looking at walls, it was hard to picture exactly what was there until we got the view in mind, because I was away from this building for 25 years. I might as well look back to the year Columbus discovered, not America, but where we were.
What is life all about, Walter?
To give you a good explanation of that, I would say this: to love your fellow person. If you have a heart and mind that could go ahead and do these things, and you know what you're saying and talking to them about, this is where you can make your friends. But it'll never come to that because there's always competition. You take that into consideration as you're going in there, and you have a lot of noise and screeching and howling and all of that due to the different operations on machinery. And you eventually come to it where you're used to the whole thing. It's just a part of your everyday life.
It's the music of your life.
Yes, the music of your life. It was music. When you saw something turning out and you looked at it and you said, boy, this is a good job, it was music. You felt proud of what you were doing. And a lot of these machinists, they took pride in what they were doing because the product that they made, it was just like going into a jewelry store and looking at some kind of jewelry. It was the same way in a machine shop because everything had to be accurate. Everything had to fit. So this is what it was all about. And everybody seemed to be compatible with one another. No matter if you worked up on the third floor or you were down on the first floor, everybody knew one another. It was like one big family at that time. You'd kid one another in the morning and kid one another at night when you left here. So today, they say there's a lot of stress. There is a lot of stress, but it all depends on how you take your stress. You can take it by saying, well, I've got so much to do today. Today is a day that we'll always have. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow never comes. So you play it one day at a time. And if you can't finish your job today, why push it? You'll finish it tomorrow and it'll be a better job than if you tried to finish the day before.
That's a very difficult lesson to learn.
It is. Well, with the different personalities, each one has different thoughts. You can have this subject here, and everybody else will have a different thought or a different view. And then you get together, you might talk about it and say, well, we'll thrash it out now and get it done. So that's what it's all about. We had a man working in here, his name was Frank Gelato. He was a great person, great mechanic. He was one of these people that was always smiling, always happy-go-lucky. And we didn't know, the day that he passed away, he got hurt in this shop. He suffered a hernia and it ruined him. He passed away from it. And when we went to his funeral, you should see some of the regalia they had on the wall. He was a prince, an Arabian prince. We never knew it.
Wow.
He had all of these here, the big stars they have on there, whatever. And that was laid all out at the funeral parlor. That's the only time we found out that he was a prince. And when we looked back and thought about the way he acted here, he was a prince. He helped the youngsters, and he got along with everybody that was in the shop. Hey, Frank, what do you want? He'd be over there to help you out. All the different people, different personalities that you meet in a lifetime like this. And I guess more so because when you become sort of a supervisor, you meet all these people. Which, if you're just running a machine every day, you don't. So we take it day by day and live accordingly.
What?
I think we do. We just thought it might be nice to just for you to see the room empty.
Department, and every part that was designed to be manufactured was going over by the drafting room. They would check it out. If there was to be any improvements, they would bring it into the designing department, and all of that before it came into the shop, or even a casting was made. Then, at one time, we did have a little shop that made prototypes, smaller machines. Then we would take it from there. But when we got into this shop here, each machine that was assembled just went together like, how can I say it? Not a jigsaw puzzle, but it went together as smooth as it possibly could with the machine work that was done right to a T. All your grinding process, all your turning, your milling machines, your drill press work, they all had their different operations to do, and they came out perfect. Of course, once in a while, you would have a rejection or a correction on a part that the machinist blew up on, it didn't do it right. But when the machine was completed, that was it. It'd run out of here, and it'd run when it got into the can factories. It had to. Because when you get down to, like I pointed out on that can tester, at that time the process would be maybe you'd get one leaky can out of 10,000, which is pretty close work. And that would only be caused because the seam wasn't done properly. So all in all, here we are. I don't say the shop was perfect, what really went out of here always worked when it got into the other can factories.
How do you account for all those wonderful machinists who managed to
They're part
gather
of the
here?
old breed, Joanna. They were men that took pride in what they were doing. And the apprentices that we brought up, they took pride in listening to the machinist himself. Even the supervisors, including myself, if we saw somebody doing something wrong, we'd stop and help them and show them how to do it right. All the way through, and that's why we built. We had the apprentices that left here when this shop closed, every one of them is working today. Everybody was hunting for people that came out of the American Can Company. It made us feel pretty good about the whole thing because they knew we had more machinery in here, more versatile machinery than any other machine shop here. I'm not talking about the government machine shop, it's just the can company. And they learned it from A to Z, regardless of what it was. So we took pride in that, and the only reason, like I said, they closed up at Brisbane was, of course, the cost of parts and the cost of taxes and all of that. So they moved back east because you had not the high wages that you had out here to be able to make their net profit at the end of the year to keep on going. But all in all, the case history of this shop here, we were all pretty proud of it. Being that the building itself was earthquake-proof, we had a couple of tremors here when we had our last earthquakes, but it shook a couple of bars off the rack, and that was all. But I understand that there's one part of the building that has to be fixed up, and that's out in the back there where the pattern shop was. Do they still demand that?
Well, yeah, it's going to happen. To what extent, nobody really knows at the moment. And then also where what we call the penthouse up on the roof used to be where they used to store the blueprints and stuff, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
That also needs to be reinforced.
Well, I'm not a seismic expert or anything like that, but I don't know why they tackle that part of the building because there's no heavy work has ever been done in that part of the building. That was the pattern shop. And that was just another addition. It was just like putting an addition to your own home. You build a little base to it and put a room on, and that's it. But when this building was built, it's all structural steel.
Right. But we talked about how they also said that that part of the assembly floor wasn't reinforced in steel, but we are going to have them do the drill tests because of what you said, and it's like totally absurd. I mean, how come that part wasn't done and the rest was? I mean, that doesn't make any sense, but...
I can't figure that out because the building was put up all at one time.
Exactly.
With structural iron and everything else. So that doesn't add up to me. Like I said, I'm not an expert on that, but when you see structural iron all over the building, it's a cinch that that had to be included.
Exactly. So they are going to do the testing, you know, the drill test or whatever it's called, to see if they hit steel. I'm sure they will.
They better. Then they'll have to get at the contractors that built the building way back when.
That'll be a real dig. Walter, if there was something that you could advise a young machinist who is coming up, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, the only advice, you'd have a little talk with them first about ability, how much they like it, what they think they're going to do. And if they only take half interest in it, you know that they're not going to make it. We want somebody that's going to come in here and I want to be a machinist. I want to learn the trade. And when you ask them a few questions, how about high school or college, wherever they went? Have you had any experience in their machine shops? And some of them will say yes, like we have the O'Connell School up here. And the kids went through there and got some training. They come in here and they kept on with their training. We did run into a couple of them that we had to tell them, you're not going to be a machinist, just by watching them work. The adaptability of how they use their hands and how they put parts in machine tools and whatnot. So to be any kind of a success, you have to really like what you're doing. You follow me there?
True, very true.
Like I even told my son, my daughter, if you don't like what you're doing, get out and try something else, because all you're going to have is a headache for the rest of your life.
Which results in ulcers. Were there any other questions we need to ask Walter in regards to the show?
No, just where I'm having a real difficult.
Oh, we had these earlier, like those air pump beams I showed you, those for the steam engines. You put this on your nut and you'd hit it with a sledgehammer to tighten it more. The same way here, quite heavy. That's the single end race. And then to get more power, you would put a long pipe on here and get a couple of men to tighten the nuts some more. But
I wondered, I mean, it would be quite a workout. You know, these are
they're muscle builders.
muscle builders.
And there's something like that.
Yeah. Happy days. Apparently we got all of these. That's an offset wrench. Somebody made that special. You can see it was heated and bent. So you had to get in there vertically. But all wrenches for your different parts of the machine. These came out of a machine shop that was doing heavy work. The size of those nuts and the size of the wrenches will tell you that.
What was this, Joanne? Is that this thing? Where is it?
Well, they got that spiral gear.
Yeah, there's a spiral gear. There we are, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you see in your old automobile, but in a smaller version of it. Rear end drives.
Some of the stuff like that,
Yeah.
we just, you know, so interesting looking.
Now, are these parts going to be anything for the show?
Yes.
Well, we're working with them right now, but see, I
got a bunch of those bullet casings.
Old shell
yeah,
blanks.
Yeah.
A hunter could use these. He could go ahead and shave them, fix them up, load them. Live ammunition.
Now, this is the,
Yeah, this is something we know you didn't make.
we know you didn't make it, but we were having a very hard time getting what was made here, and so for our price
Well, we
point.
didn't make anything.
That small.
No. Well, we made a lot of small parts, but nothing for bombs or anything. We did make
Torpedo liners, didn't you?
bomb noses here. We made about 5,000 bomb noses at the shape of that nose right there. And they were made out of aluminum. They were for incendiary bombs.
Would it melt down?
The what?
Would the tips melt down, or what would how would it work?
The incendiary? They're made out of magnesium. The magnesium burns and burns and
Okay.
burns, see, and due to the way they're loaded. When they're dropped, that's when they pick up their firing part. And when they hit the ground, they explode, and the incendiary particles, they go over no matter how big an area. That's where your burning of these homes are done when the bombers were dropping them. And magnesium, we were very careful with magnesium because it was highly flammable. So one day we had a bunch of shavings in the backyard, and they got next to a welder out there, and it just flared right up, and the heat is terrific. So what we did, we put them in barrels and they carted away, but magnesium is lighter than aluminum. Like I said, it's highly inflammable too. But other than that, like we made die parts for 20 millimeter shells, 50 caliber shells, the bomb noses, And like I said before, the radar parts, submarine parts, whatever they had out there, we made.
Now, what did a recoil spring for a cannon look like? We tried to figure that out. Of course, all we
The
could find
recoil?
all we could find were truck springs.
The recoil spring was about 3 feet long, and it was in a bronze housing, and they're put alongside the cannon itself. And every time it would fire, you got the back pressure. After the bullet left, the cannon would come back. So these recoil springs to the side would take that shot. Rather than have the whole carriage of the cannon on and going all the way back, it stood there in one position, and the recoil springs would take care of the firing part of it. The magazine that I have there, did Benji take a picture of that?
Which one? Which
It was a
magazine?
155 millimeter cannon,
Oh, I don't think he did.
Oh no.
and that showed the recoil spring housing.
Oh, I'll have to look for that.
It's right alongside of the cannon itself.
Well, in any case, now we were trying to hone in and get a little bit more accurate, and that's why I'm desperately looking for dies, but we haven't been very successful.
Well, it's pretty hard to, like I showed you on that picture today.
Yeah.
All the components to a die, there would be some pretty good weight there. It all depends. The punch cut edges that make the ends, they're the lightest part, but the base of the die is they're as heavy as these wrenches.
Yeah. That's okay. We have an incredibly powerful woman moving them around. Shakiri. I don't know if you remember her, but she's very small. And she holds up one of these wrenches, and it's almost the size of her body. It's quite remarkable.
It's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Did they have anything smaller than that down at Laird's?
Which one? Smaller than those wrenches? They had a few things, yeah, but not really, no. And these were really in this dusty, dark, dungeon-like room that didn't seem like it had been open for a long time. He said that he had dies at one time. He took us into yet another layer of one of those dark rooms, but we couldn't find any.
It would be pretty hard because I don't know who would have them. Unless you went into a canning plant.
But would the ones that they have now, be anything like the ones that you guys made here years ago?
Oh yes, it has to be. The round can, they're all made the same.
The technology would not have changed it
No.
that much?
Not one bit.
No kidding. Wow.
You still have to stamp out the ends, and you have to roll your metal. You still have to send the tin plate to slitters to cut the different heights of the cans. So there's no difference there. The only technology they did come up with, we used to have a seam on the body of the can that locked like this, and then it would be pressed together. But today, we only have a seam it goes between two rollers, and it welds the metal together. And if you notice at the can today, you see a little black line going along the side of the body. That's where we used to have the heavy seam, but that's the only change in the can.
Isn't a seam.
So, and then the extrusion of cans, like beer cans, they're made out of one piece, and the dies are just the same, because when they hit the piece of metal, it's down in the bottom of the die with such force that it forces the metal up alongside the diameter of whatever can you're going to make, like the beer cans.
This might be a very dumb question, but
No.
this calling it a die, where did that name come from? I mean, you know, is it short for diameter, or, you know, why is it called a die?
No, you have me there, Lizzie. I wouldn't know. All we ever knew it was a die.
Because I remember the first time we started talking about dyes, I was thinking, you know, dyes like you dye colors, you know, and
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
Well,
DYE.
this is DIE,
Yeah.
that die, and the other
And then
color
it-
is DYE.
yeah, and
You have me there.
Now that's
How
remarkable.
it came to be named a dye, I don't think the question, no, nobody's ever asked me that. I've never asked anybody that either. We just took it for granted. The dye part.
But
Oh,
now,
that's interesting. Now I'll have to look it up to find out.
and the different dyes were the different sizes of the cans,
That's
right?
right.
And that's what stamped out the size of the can.
That's
can.
right. Well, you have dyes, even in the jewelry business, you have dyes that stamp out your rings and whatnot, the different forms and whatever they have on the ring. So they make their dye, and here we go again.
Wow, I actually,
Stumped Walter Lister. That's something.
that's amazing.
No, it's not that much. It's just that I didn't pay any particular attention to it, and I don't think even the dye makers. In all the time that I worked here, nobody's asked me that question. You put me on the spot.
Leave it to some punk in 1994 to ask you.
No. It's good. What the heck did they know? I couldn't even give you an answer on that, where the name came from.
Walter, did you see our incredible winch that we have?
The which?
The winch? Oh yeah, you'd
You
seen
saw
it
it
outside,
but not
yeah.
since it's been moved upstairs. We should show
I don't know
it.
if you remember that we had this winch downstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is, and it raises this this skywalk. Yeah.
That's the one that was in the backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this platform here, we call it the Skywalk. And
Yes, and a beautiful cart of cans actually travels up this thing.
I know, I was thinking it's too bad we can't bring the cans down.
Yeah.
Now, what is the purpose of that? To put up the curtains?
No, this
No.
isn't the show. This is for the show.
This is
I was
kind of,
wondering how you were going to get up there.
yeah. Yeah, Benji built this. And
This is part of what's called the set design.
so it's
But
the way that we
there'll
are.
be nobody walking up and down that.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Sliding it,
yes.
maybe?
Oh yes,
Oh, yes.
it's quite
The
a
words never cease.
yeah.
Now, Walter, we're a little nervous about you seeing the show because, you know, there's people climbing up all over the rafters and walls and windows and the skywalk and Cyclops and...
Cyclops dances in the show.
Uh-huh.
It's a dirty job, Cyclops. Cyclops has. Cyclops has been dropping a little oil every,
Yeah, he's got
along
his
the way.
fires going all over.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to warn you of these things, you know, before you see the show. And this is what Zacco Dance Theater does. I mean, everybody who's climbing the walls and things like that are very, very trained at doing this. And so they're very skilled, just like a fine machinist. So is the members of Zacco in what they're doing. And people like me, I make an appearance in the show, but my feet, well, it's not true
That's
anymore.
not true.
I actually fly too.
But Walter, we have climbed almost every inch of this room now, and it's been wonderful. We've gone up every wall and across every truss, and of course discovered these odd pieces of paper and so on. And it's been a wonderful experience. It's a beautiful building, and it's sometimes, I wish that other people can sit up there and actually look across these trusses at certain parts of the day. I mean, it's exquisite. I mean, absolutely exquisite. So, I mean, I know, like you, my memories are far shorter lived here, but I will take a lot with me when I go, because it is a very special place.
Well, it was for me, I can tell you that. We like this building very much because, as I explained before, the reason the can company builds these buildings this way, in case anything happened to this machine shop where we didn't produce, they could turn it into a can manufacturing plant. So that's the reason it had to be constructed like it is because it had to take the vibration of the machinery and the heavy material that went through it. See, so all of that was taken into consideration, including the wooden blocks that were on the floor. That was for the to make it pleasant for the workers. They wouldn't have to be walking on concrete all day long, you know, and that's pretty hard on the feet.
And for many years, we thought the purpose of those blocks were it would be easy if pieces of, you know, machinery fell, that it wouldn't hurt it as much.
Well, that too was brought into effect because some of the castings were fragile, and if you dropped some of them on a concrete floor, they could break. So this had a lot to do with it too. It's just like putting new linoleum in your breakfast room or your kitchen, whatever. They have this type of linoleum where you can drop a dish on it and it'll bounce instead of break. So that was the reason for that too. And then to make it comfortable for the men, we used to build platforms for them to stand on. But then the chips that came off the machine would get into the separation of the boards and the little platform, and it would get into the soles of their feet. So then the blocks, they come in handy. We didn't have to do that anymore. The sweep would come along and sweep up all the shavings and get it out of the machine as well. And then they kept the building warm on top of that too. But at one time, are the blocks still under here?
Oh, yeah.
At one time, when they put them down, some, not a good mechanic, he brought tar in. And he wanted to tar up all the connections. So they started down here, and nobody gave it a thought. But when the sun come out and everything warmed up, the tar came up to the top. When they put a casting down, it stuck to the tar. Then your feet would stick to the tar.
Exactly.
So then what they did with the rest of it, that when they put the blocks down, they put sand in between.
Huh.
And that kept everything pretty well clean. But the building was made, it had a lot to do with the comfort of the people working here, because even the heating,
Yeah.
the radiation, there's nothing better than hot water going through your radiators. Gives you more heat than if you had flame heat, you know what I'm referring to. So all in all, coming here like today or any other day that's cold, this building was always nice and warm. And that had a lot to do with production too.
I know I personally get very upset when people refer to Project Artaud as a warehouse, because we're not a warehouse.
Not a
We're
warehouse.
a factory.
We might be a warehouse in this respect, that we did make a lot of extra parts and put them in our inventory.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not a warehouse, because those parts were always being used.
And plus,
manufactured.
warehouses were not built for people to be in them,
Oh, no.
you know? Not like a factory.
They're more or less corrugated iron that's on the outside, and the roofs are made the same way, and they're not stabilized like these. But this had to be built like it was because of the amount of machinery and the tonnage that was on these floors. Like we were talking to Peter Coonan,
Right.
why that cement block was in its room down there on the floor. Well, that had to be that way because of the grinder that went on there. The grinder had to grind rolls for the lithograph press, and the rolls had to have a mirror finish. There couldn't be a scratch or any kind of a reflection or anything else on it. So it had a separate foundation, and that foundation was set in sand. And no matter what kind of vibration we had in the building, it would never transfer to that machine. So a lot of the other machines were made the same way. We had machines that were on soft pads. It was like a rubber pad, and the vibration would stop where the rubber was. It would never go through the part that you were manufacturing. So this roll, when it come off of the machine, you could even comb, well, I haven't got much, but you could even comb your hair like looking into a mirror. All of those things were taken into consideration when this building was put up, that the least vibration you have, the better job you got for your machine tools. And that went all the way down through the history of this shop.
You mentioned something about your brother Frank, about how he used his knees and he's got his elbows going.
All these milling machines, you have different levers on different sides of the machine. You got them on top, you got them on bottom, and he'd be working up here, and he'd want to move the table, so he'd kick the lever with his knee to get the table moving. Whereas other machinists would reach down and do it hand, just by hand. Well, he didn't do that. That's what made him so good. Not because he was my brother, but he was a good machinist. And during the war, he went up to the shop superintendent, and he asked for a raise. Shop superintendent says no. My brother says, I quit. He locked up his box and he walked out. He went down to the waterfront and worked down there, and he wound up as a foreman down there.
So he never came back then?
No, he never come back again.
Were you sad when he left?
I was. I lost a good man. He turned out parts during the war. It was amazing the way he worked. We had what we called valve covers for PT boat engines. They were made out of aluminum, and they would cover the whole top of the engine. And he was knocking out 120 of these a day, facing them off so they would fit. When he left, the most we could ever get out of that machine was 45. And Andy Larson, our milling machine foreman, he says, do you think you could get Frank back again? I says, no, you'll never get him back, Andy. When he makes up his mind, it's it. He asked for a raise, he didn't get it, so that was it. He went to another place where he got his raise. That's the way it was. So all in all, I'm glad I came down here because it brought back a lot of memories that passed by. They're bringing up now, and I could just see them today as they were then. And now I'm considering the people that I'm meeting today, too. This is great.
So what night do you want to come to the show?
I don't know how, I can't drive at nighttime.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know how I'll be able to get down here.
Well, we can come pick you up.
Oh, that'd be too much out of me.
Oh, gosh.
Sometimes 11 o'clock, sometimes 9 o'clock.
Because we have a party happening one night after the show. And it would be really great if you could come to the party, too.
We know you're a one day at a time man, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. See you when you get here.
Well, we make no promises. Promises should never be made by anyone anyhow because they're made to be broken and they very seldom keep them. But when the time comes, we'll think about it. We'll see what happens.
Good. Do you have any questions for us?
Have I any? I think you've answered all that we've talked about.
Did we ever ask you what happened to your finger? I can't remember if we did.
No, we didn't.
They just wore out. The knees.
No, the finger that it looks like one of them's short, got cut or something? No, your finger.
Oh, this is one. Wow, that was the most stupid thing I ever did in my life. This was after I retired.
Oh no!
I worked all these years in the machine shop and hardly ever got a cut. And even the machinists, when they heard about this, they had to laugh at me. My daughter asked me to make a desk for her son, a writing desk. I do cabinet work too. So I says, okay, so this one day I went down there and I had to finish off the outer edge of the table on the desk. And I set up on what they call a drum grinder. It's a grinder, or a sander rather. And the sanding material goes up and down, it oscillates. So I put a fence, locked the fence on the table. See, this is the table here, and this is the wheel here. And I was pushing it through between the fence and the wheel, and it took me and took the finger right between
Oh,
and ground it right off.
that must have been painful.
No, it didn't hurt. Believe it or not, Joanne. And I didn't feel a thing. It was all torn. The nail was off, and it was hanging there. So I went out and I called my next door neighbor. I says, Frank, take me over to the emergency. So what happened? I says, I just did a dumb thing. I put my finger through where it didn't belong. So then the doctor that was over there, Dr. Castro at Alameda Hospital, she looked at it and she said, well, we got to take it off, and that was it.
That's
And
amazing.
I really miss it because when I'm talking to young ball players that are coming up, like we go up at our monthly meeting, they want to know how to throw a curve, a knuckleball, in curve, out curve, or whatever. And I can't show them how to throw the knuckleball because I haven't got that finger anymore. I don't know whether you know what a knuckleball is or you heard about it.
Yeah.
But it's like taking this. And you put your fingers with your nails into the seam. So the ball is resting in your hand here, and when you release it with your fingers spreading out this way, and the ball just floats. It doesn't turn, but it floats, it dips and goes sideways and everything else in a knuckleball. And that's why there's not too many knuckleball pitchers in baseball today. Because it's one ball that sometimes you can control it and other times you can't. If you get a little bit of wind coming behind the catcher, it'll take that ball and make it float. And it could break this way, it could break that way, it could break down, it could push up. So there's no way of controlling it where you could put it pinpoint in one spot. So that was a result of that. So taking everything into consideration, I miss it. Now this happened back in 1969. So the only thing I miss now, I can't play ball with the kids, the grandchildren. Can't throw the ball like I want to throw. But I had a lot of fun doing that too. Yeah, that poses a problem.
Yeah. Stumped by Lizzie Spaguzza. Who would have known?
I actually have another question. Where did all the women go who worked here during the war?
They went back to their homes. I had one, Gracie was her name. She was quite a girl. And I told her one day, I says, Gracie, I says, we got 10,000 valve seats to make. Can you sit down there for 2 months? She did. I set up her machine. She went ahead. We put these here valve seats in her machine, set up all the tooling, put up a chair, made it nice and soft, and she sat there for 2 months on these here valve seats. Never complained once. Then we had other women that run our milling machines where, of course, the heavier set woman would be on the heavy-duty machines because of the weight of the castings. And the lighter women would get onto the smaller machines, and some of them we had doing the bench work like you see on here. We'd go ahead and file burrs, clean up castings and things like that. But we never had one bit of trouble. They all came in the morning, they did their job, they left at nighttime, and Joanna asked me if any of them got married. Well, that I couldn't answer. I wouldn't know.
We're gonna have to look up some. There must be some record somewhere.
But they were all well behaved, every one of them. They knew they had a job to do. Of course, they didn't get the heavier type of work, or the most accurate work. In fact, a lot of them got a job where it was repetitive, maybe 300, 400, 500 pieces. And the setup man would come along and set up the machinery, the cutters and everything else, and this is the way we want you to do it, this is the way you hold it, this is the way you put it in the vise, tamp it down so it doesn't slip out and all of that. And they picked it up right now. And I believe some of them had experience before they even come into this shop. I had one girl, she stood with the can company after this plant got through with war work, and she went over to the can factory, and she made good over there at the can factory, too. So where the rest of them went, I guess they departed for all points of the world. I don't know. But they were good people.
It's kind of sad they had to leave.
It was in this respect that all the machines were taken up by the journeyman. You had to have your machinists. And due to the fact that a lot of the work was so different, and they weren't set up for that type of work. See, we would always have to have a setup man with them. Well, that was cost to the company. Whenever you have an extra person to help on a machine that one man or one lady could do it, that's where the profits came in. But they were treated accordingly. They were treated just like any other person. You come here, you did your work, and that was it.
But that must have been new to see so many women come in a shop that was mainly men up to the war.
It was. It was in this respect that when the first women come in, of course, oh boy, we got a girl coming in, all of that. But then when the rest of them came in, it was just a natural thing. Here we need a person on this machine, and they're putting him to work. She or he or whatever. And it went on fine. When the, say one of the girls was working on a machine that had the night shift on it, they would get together, the night shift man and the day shift woman would get together and they'd explain what the job is all about, and that was it.
So with the night shift and the day shift coming in, there would be somewhat of an overlap before the day shift would leave and the night shift would take over, so
They would take over as soon as the day shift left. We quit at 4:45, and they would go to the machine and start at 4:45.
So how soon would they get here? I mean,
About 15 minutes ahead of time.
So there's like a 15-minute overlap
Oh,
between
sure.
the two?
Some of them may be right on the button. They'd be there right in the last minute. But those kind of people that came at the last minute, they usually knew what was happening, and they could step right in and go ahead with whatever was on the machine, too. So the woman, of course, being that they hadn't had the experience that the men had, you'd have to spend a little more time with them explaining. And they would go ahead and do it.
Did any of them make it into the apprenticeship program here?
No, not here. No, we never ever had a girl in the apprenticeship program. It would be, I think in this respect, it would be a difficult job for a young lady to come in here and ask to be an apprentice. I'm not quite sure how you would handle it. Eventually, it would be that if you did do that, you would gain the experience as to how to handle situations as such. But if they show a willingness, my thinking is this. When you're working with hands, especially women, there's a lot of things that happen, the cuts, broken fingernails, and damaging the joints in your hands and all of that. It would be pretty hard for a woman to do it because putting a part in a machine tool where you have to have your wrenches all day long and you're tightening and loosening and all that, that could be kind of a hard job. So, all in all, I think it was better for them to go out and do work that's compatible with what they can do rather than come in where there's all this heavy machinery and all the heavy work.
So you lost young men who had to go to the war out of the shop?
We lost quite a few. But they come back right after the war was over, the majority of them come back. and went right on to their machine tools as if they never left.
So you saved the jobs for them.
Oh, yes. They knew they had their job when they came home. If the job, what they were doing at that particular time was taken by somebody else, then we would put them in another department. Keep them here. So all in all, we had a pretty good relationship. It was just like in the shipyards. Rosie the Riveter. I don't know whether you ever read about her. All right. They were pretty good at handling a riveting gun and a chipping and caulking gun. I worked in the shipyard before I came here back in 1917. That was in World War I. And the shipyard that I worked in was in South City. And they had 4 slips where they launched sideways on their ships, and we had women down there. They were doing the easiest part of the riveting. But they would go, they'd take these guns and they'd put them up against the shell of the ship, and you'd swear the guy, you'd swear the lady was a man. That's the way it was. But it goes to show you that there is a lot of things that a woman can do, and do more so than a man, because of the patience they have. I'm not saying this because there's women around me here, but I've had that experience. Like I was talking about this girl that sat down for 2 months. A man would never do that. He'd go crazy. You have to have that ability to be patient with what you're doing. So running a shop, it's all a matter of getting along with your people, how they come in, how they feel, what you do for them, and take it from there. Right hit here, that thing just twisted like this and come back and wham, that's when they got a big noise up there. It never came down there. But that's the only thing you would get up there is a deer hunt.
So you were here when that happened?
Oh, the
You were in
earthquake?
the space?
Oh, we were up here. Yeah.
Well, that must have been scary. That huge crane going torque.
Well, there's nothing you could do about it, but just look at it. It only was a few seconds, because when the jolt hit, the crane took off, and I'd say about 5 seconds, that's about all, and it slammed back again in position.